Good morning. Welcome to Cardano Sense. My name is Anthony, and today we're going to talk about the way Cardano transitions from Shelley to Goguen to Voltaire, when it went from Byron to Shelley. There's a lot of people asking how Cardano is going to move so quickly since it took him so long to get to Shelley in the first place, and it's a legitimate question. But first, if you want to support me, my ADA address is there, and I run a stake pool. Sophie, quick word on my stake pool. It's a small stake pool. I only have 1.5 million committed, but I'm doing fairly well. I'm minting about one block, an average of one block per epoch since we started, which is a little more than I'm supposed to be minting, which means the rewards are a little bit more on average. So anyway, take a look if you'd like to. Okay, back to this transition. So there are people that, and rightfully so, are saying, well, we had the test net, that took a while. Then we had the ITN testnet, that took a while, and then all of a sudden now we have Shelley. But it took a while, excuse me, for us to get to that point. Why should I believe or think that from here on it's going to be quick to move to Goguen and Voltaire and kind of beyond? And it's a good question, and you can understand why people are a little suspicious is the right word, but a little wary to kind of believe. When Charles says we're going to move kind of quickly, I believe it. For one, I believe Charles, and for two, I watched a bunch of videos at the IOHK Summit that kind of explains the technical way that this happened. So, in this video, I'm going to, kind of on a high level, explain the technical way, why it took so long to kind of get to Shelley, and then why it's going to be quicker to move on from there. Okay, so Shelley was kind of sold as a hard fork, but it really wasn't a hard fork. I have the definition of a hard fork here on the screen. I think this is from an Investotopia or some website like that. So a hard fork, as it relates to blockchain technology, is a radical change to a network's protocol that makes previously invalid blocks and transactions valid, or vice versa. A hard fork requires all nodes or users to upgrade to the latest version of the software. So that's not what happened. So we didn't do a hard fork. We actually connected the Shelley chain onto the Byron chain. All right. So the Byron, and it's different technology. The Shelley chain produces blocks differently. The technology is just different. I don't want to really get into the weeds, but it's just a different technology. So there had to kind of be a way to connect this. And the same thing is going to happen with Voltaire and with Goguen. They're all kind of different technologies. So the way this works is there is a base layer called the consensus layer, right? The way it was described is it's just a very kind of complicated piece of software. But on this base consensus layer, right, every blockchain works on that in the Cardano ecosystem. So Byron, Shelley, the testnets, they all rest on this base layer. And I think when Charles talks about having like a granite bottom, I think he's talking about this consensus base layer. It took him a while to create this, but everything can kind of sit on that layer going forward. So they have this big, it's called the consensus layer, right? This big layer that all the blockchains can kind of go on. And then they created this software called the hard fork combinator, which makes it possible to take these different technologies and to connect them to each other. So when we went from Shelley to Byron, it was the first time that this hard fork combinator was used, at least on the main net. I'm not sure they used on the test nets, but on the main net, this was the first time this hard fork combinator was used on the main net. So what it did was it connected Byron and Shelley, so it could be a seamless transition from Byron now to Shelley. So when you look in your dataless wallet, the reason why it used to take a long time for it to upgrade, right, when you turn it on. And this is Charles. This is how Charles explained it. Is because it was transferring from Byron to dataless. So that's why you got the first like 98%, and then it took a long time for the next 2% or whatever it was, because it was kind of transitioning and going to Shelley. And I know they've now fixed that problem with the 2.0 version. but that's how they switch, right? With this hard fork combinator. So when they go to Goguen and to then to Voltaire, that's how it's going to work. So I have a video here, and I unfortunately I forget this gentleman's name. He said it so quickly. I like to give him credit. So if anybody knows his name, please put it in the comments. I'd like to make sure he gets credit. This is his video from the IOHK. So he's going to basically say the same thing in 3 of these clips, but for different reasons. So the first clip, you're going to hear him explaining the hard fork combinator and how easily it switches, right? Once you apply that software to the chain, how easily it switches from one to another. So let me hit play in this video.
And moreover, this hard fork combinator doesn't care that it's only 2 errors. We could have any number of errors. So if we...
When he says errors, I thought he was saying error, like something is wrong. But when he says errors, he's talking about obviously Goguen and Shelley and Voltaire. So
are ready to transition to Goguen, we just add one more list entry into this list and nothing else needs to change. The hard fork combinator itself does not need to change whatsoever. And now, simply by adding this one more block here, we can switch from Byron to Shelley to Goguen and beyond.
So he's explaining basically, I'm sure on a high level here, because he gets a little more into the weeds in this presentation. So if you'd like to see it, I'll link it on the bottom, or I'll tell you the name of it. But what he's saying here is basically it's just kind of flipping a switch to go to these next errors. So it's that easy once this hard fork combinator is up and running, which it is. Okay, so next here he's going to talk about the hard fork combinator and how easily it just connects the chains to kind of make one long single chain.
No matter how many errors we have, and no matter what those ledgers are, as long as they have certain properties that we think about because it's all abstract, we can define this combinator, this piece of software that takes any of these ledgers and just makes them look as if it's a single chain. There is no hard fork at all.
So he's talking about how it just makes it into basically a single chain. Now this next little bit here, and this is the last one, is going to explain how this will go on to continuously support the rest of the blockchain. He doesn't say it in here, but I'm sure when we build on, when we finally get into Goguen and people are building chains actually on top of our technology here, I'm thinking he's also talking about this when he says how it's going to work in the future. So again, it's kind of the same, but...
And since we now have the hard fork combinator, we can go from Byron to Shelley to Goguen without having to change the hard fork combinator at all, which means that we can support an ever-evolving blockchain very easily.
Okay, so that's the end of it. And again, I'll post that in the comments so you can look at the whole thing. It's about 40 minutes long, I think, but it's really interesting. It does get kind of technical. Another way he explains it, though, and he does show the code a bit, so it's actually called this, but he explains it kind of like one of those telescopes that you pull out like this, and it's one piece, another piece. So every time another error, the error as in Goguen or Shelley, is added to the blockchain, it's like adding another piece to that telescope. And it's kind of an easy way to kind of explain it. But he gets more into the weeds if you want the technical kind of jargon. There's also a way, which is interesting, to backtrack if you need to a certain point, and that's kind of interesting to me because I guess when this was run all by IOHK, which I guess more than 50% is still there because of the D parameter. I think it's the D parameter. Is still not down past the 50%. You can actually move back a bit. So if, like, for instance, let's say we went to Goguen and there was some kind of terrible problem, it would be, they have the ability to say, okay, backtrack, and to kind of go back to Shelley for a second. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I thought that was kind of interesting too. So I'm going to leave you with that, and it was kind of a short video, but I just wanted to kind of get into and explain that because people are wondering how we're going to go so quickly to the next errors, to Goguen and Voltaire. So this is kind of the technical, and so I believe what he says, and I believe what Charles says as far as us moving quickly. So hopefully it happens. I'm real excited for Goguen, and my next video again on Tuesday. I'm going to take the weekend. And I'm really going to dig into Plutus. So I'm going to do I'm trying to do a really good Plutus video that shows the playground and kind of explains it a little bit. So, all right, see you next time. Have a great day.